Welcome to the We Founders podcast. We are women entrepreneurs, founders, and investors sharing our stories about how we raise funds, invest, and build our businesses from the Western Balkans. I'm your host, Gaia Montelatici, General Partner at Studio X Ventures.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our new podcast episode of the We Founders series and another episode about the Unlock Acceleration Program. And today it's my great pleasure to introduce you to one important team member of the Wikimedia Deutschland team, who's Lucia and who's the program manager and community engagement lead. And we also have another guest who's Frank from Follow the Vote team, who's a team that attended a previous edition of the Acceleration Program. As we mentioned before, the program itself aims at supporting and accelerating solutions that make access to free knowledge more basically more inclusive and also easier. And one thing we want to look at today is what and who the social innovators are and what they do, what the solutions that they propose are. So I think I would like first to ask to Lucia directly to introduce briefly herself and also to maybe give us an idea of what these innovators are, what they do, where they come from, and especially what their motivations are. So Lucia, to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me also. So my name is Lucia. I've been the program manager of the Unlock Accelerator since the beginning for the past 2 years. And I think the most exciting thing for me is also just being part of this community of what you also now termed innovators, I guess, and what we also like to say is free knowledge innovators, maybe. And I like this term because I guess there's a lot to unpack there, right? It's a very dense term. So I'd love to actually just, take this challenge and do so for you for a moment. So for one part, right, we're always talking about free knowledge, which is something that we actually talked a lot about on the last episode of the We Founders podcast, right? So if you haven't listened to that yet, I do recommend having a tune in just to get kind of the full picture. But very briefly, knowledge being free basically means that information and data is freely accessible to everybody in the world to use and also to modify in any way that you see fit, without any restrictions and also free of charge. And then we also have this term of innovators, right, that you mentioned, which I guess in its simplest form, an innovator is somebody who is building an innovation of sorts, something that is new, a change, a renewal of some way or another. And when we put those two together, those two terms, and we play in the context of the Unlock Accelerator, I would say that these free knowledge innovators that we work with are people who they have a very entrepreneurial mindset, I would say. They have a very activist mindset, maybe even. So they're doers. They're people who are working on a very, very specific challenge in the context of free knowledge that they're seeking to tackle or maybe even solve. And often in doing so, they do have quite a bit of a creative approach, right? They're very daring, and maybe there's something that we would also call change makers, so people who are seeking change in our society. And when I look back at the past editions of the program, I would say that these people, they have very diverse backgrounds, come from very diverse occupations also. I think for the one part, some of them might be kind of the people that you would initially think of. So like developers or software engineers, or even people who would consider themselves maybe social entrepreneurs in a wider sense of the word. But then there's also people like, like teachers or media experts, marketing experts. So a lot of, different backgrounds, quite a range that comes together here in this group. And I guess what unites them, though, and this is me coming back to your question of, what motivates these people to be a part of the Unlock Accelerator, is that they're all driven by making true impact. They are triggered by some kind of inequality or injustice in the world, I would say, and are looking to create more social well-being. And in doing so, actually, they always look for making, a sustainable impact. So making sure that they positively affect our society in the long run, in the long term. And specifically in our context, figuring out how we can find ways of sharing and using information and data in a way that nobody is actually excluded or underrepresented in our society. And I think the one thing I'd like to add here is something I find very interesting, is that most of these people, they probably wouldn't call themselves free knowledge innovators, right? So I think there's two reasons for this. One is that this whole term or this whole system of free knowledge innovation ecosystem is quite new. It's very untouched. It's something that we are trying to help build and nourish, but is not very established in itself yet, hopefully. And then I think the other aspect is, and this I find a very, very interesting dynamic, is that free knowledge is such a broad term, and it's also rather unknown. So most people, or I'm guessing that there are actually a lot of projects out there that are actually already actively working towards positive impact on free knowledge, but they're not necessarily aware of it. So let me give you just a brief example, because I think a lot of people who enter this realm of free knowledge, they're actually entering through different gateways. So for instance, you might be a developer who's developing, let's say, an open source gaming app for your mobile phone, or you're somebody who's just looking to educate people on health topics related to, or through a wiki platform, let's say. Or you might be somebody who's, looking for different models of getting people involved in democratic decision-making processes. So you're kind of looking through this lens of democracy or education or health or digitalization, whatever that lens might be, but you're often unknowingly already contributing to an open knowledge society. You're just not necessarily aware of it. And I think this is kind of where the Unlock Accelerator comes in, and we try to get, reel these people in and place a new lens onto them and help them realize what they're doing for society beyond kind of their individual projects.
Thank you so much, Lucia. It's very interesting, and I appreciate very much that we're somehow unpacking the concept of free knowledge, which is obviously an important definition that we give to provide a framework to what we do. But at the same time, I think here today we do want to go into the details of that, into all the possible aspects and topics and sectors that you can also touch upon. So I think we do have some keywords, let's say. Of course, as we said, the innovators, the free knowledge innovators. At the same time, we heard about change makers and creativity, entrepreneurship, and all these aspects of one person, individual or team, can come together to bring social impact in this huge domain that is free knowledge. So I think this is a great way to step towards Frank, which is with us today from the Follow the Vote team, and to hear more about their solution and actually also the problem they started from, and hopefully also hearing about the social impact that is, of course, the final aim for what they propose. So Frank, would you like to tell us more?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Julia, for having me. My name is Frank. I am the project lead from Follow the Vote, and I'm one of the chair members of the Political Innovation Association. So maybe that's also a good place to start. I think it fits quite well to what Lucia already said in a broad sense of what is really the problem that we're addressing in a broad sense. What we're trying to do is we're trying to bring innovation to the political space. And because of that, we started the Political Innovation Association, which I am chairman of with Maren Heinz, who's unfortunately not here today, but yeah, is equally cool. Basically our mission is to bring politics to the 21st century. So what we see happening is that as technology is driving forward and new innovations happen, political innovation cannot stay behind. Otherwise you get a bit too big gap between the needs that arise from those new technological innovations and yeah, basically what is provided in the political solutions. So in practice, that really means that we're looking into different industries, different sectors, especially also the commercial sector. And we're trying to find what's working there and trying to implement them into societal systems. So now a bit more concretely about what we did within the Unlock program. It was, of course, like almost around the election time. And this is one of the most, in Germany. I always forget that now I'm in an international context. So yeah, the German elections were on the 26th of September. So this is, of course, one of the biggest democratic things that are happening in the country. So, of course, we wanted to do something for that. So as we are young ourselves, we were super aware how difficult it is to inform yourself about who to vote for. And as social media and different actors are now playing a bigger and bigger role in determining someone's vote, we wanted to have something which was more objective and goes more into the actual standpoints of political parties. So what we found is that there's a really interesting innovation, and it's already like way, I think in 1919, it was the first voting advice application, as you call it. In Germany, the most popular one is the Valomat. And the idea of a voting advice application is rather simple. Here are the standpoints of the political party, and you have like 30 questions. You can either answer agree, disagree, or neutral. And by answering them or letting the political parties answer those questions and you answering yourself as well, you can match basically like, okay, this is your fit to this party, this is your fit to that party. So that's basically generally speaking how that works. And it's most of the time a web application or something that is freely accessible. So we thought super cool idea. Works, but we were really not satisfied with these applications which were on the market. So there was not really any innovation happening because there was also not really any competition. So in Germany, you have the Valomat, and that's kind of it. And that's the reason why we wanted to innovate. The way that we did that was, I think, fits very well to the free knowledge. And I also agree with you, Lucia. I never really saw myself as such a free knowledge innovator in that sense, but I think it fits quite well to that story. Because the Valomat basically focuses on what the parties have in their party program, or how we would like to call it, like their promises. So this is what we're going to do in the future, right? But as we all know, a part of the democratic process or voting is also to look into what parties actually did when they were elected. So you also have to look backwards and say, okay, this is actually what happened. And that was something that was completely missing in any of the voting advice applications or like the Valomat particularly, but also in the market. So for that reason, we started the project with like 10 volunteers, and we started digging into the free knowledge of all the legislation that was passed in the last 4 years. And we looked up what the parties actually voted on those legislations, what the argumentations were, and of course also the original text of those legislations to explain a bit what the context was of those votings. So in that way, what we're trying to do is innovate in this realm of voting advice applications. And this application was called Follow the Vote. That's eventually the project which we're discussing today.
Thank you so much. It's really clear. And I like the fact that you started with what's already existing. I think it's important to highlight that innovation doesn't necessarily mean something completely new that was never thought before, but can also be the idea of improving something existing or making it even better for people to access it, for people to benefit from it. That's also what we call social innovation. So I would like to hear more about how this project and this great idea fit into the Unlock Acceleration Program, and what did you need most help with in the first phases of the development of your idea, and how the program itself helped you with that?
Yeah, really good question. I think first of all, of course, meeting all the other great projects, I think creating such a hub and having other basically people which you can pitch ideas to, brainstorm with, I think is a great aspect of the program, and that helped us also to look further than just the ideas that we had. So I think that's a very important underlying aspect of what we're doing in the Unlock program. And secondly, I mean, specifically for the Follow the Vote project, what happened for us is that we scaled up quite quickly. So yeah, the mission was quite clear what we had to do. We had quite clear tasks as well. Like there were 30 or 40 legislations that we wanted to like cover, but we needed a team, and that happened already in February. So we were working with like around 10 volunteers on and off basis, like a little bit more in the pool, but like regularly speaking, 10 people working with us. And then we also got other people for social media on board, and for different aspects. We were working on funding. There were so many aspects basically happening in such a short amount of time. Maren and I both have a background in management, so we were not kind of like oblivious to that whole thing. But I think it was really, really helpful that due to our coaches, Florian and Clara, that they actually helped us to prioritize. I think that was one of the most important aspects for our project specifically, is we always wanted to do everything because we were so entrepreneurial and also enthusiastic about what we were doing. But that often results in doing a lot of things quite mediocre instead of doing a few things really exceptionally. So I think that was a huge change for us, is just to say no to some things. So that really helped, and also just to structure to for once take the time together with those coaches who have way more experience than us, so they understand the end game a lot better than we did, to just go through everything and structure everything and say, this is your role and this is your role, and if that is your role, I'm not going to overstep that boundary. So I think organizing for us was the key word here. In the Unlock program.
Yes, it does really ring a bell, considering that as a Impact Hub, we do deal with lots of acceleration of startups and support of startup, and the idea of prioritizing for someone who has such an entrepreneurial spirit is actually one of the most challenging part, also in other fields and in other sectors. So I do see the value of the coaching that you received to kind of focus and get a clearer idea of your next steps. So looking at, you did say that you grew quite fast, and the whole Follow the Vote project grew quite fast. What would you consider an achievement at this point, after quite a time since you started? And what's the impact that you see that you made or that you're expecting to make?
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot of things at the moment. I think first of all, maybe it makes sense to kind of go to the story of the voting advice application. So we launched that in August, and between August and the election, so 26th of September, we eventually reached 22,000 people. So I think that is definitely one of our biggest achievements. If you look at it from what we always tell like other people in that sense, it's a quite a factual achievement, right? So I think in numbers that sounds really good, and we didn't have any marketing budget. We really did it only with our spirits. And I think we also built something that was needed by people. I mean, looking back on the feedback that we also got during the process, a lot of people were kind of this like relief of like, finally something is happening in this space, and finally someone has that same of like, oh, why is that button over there? But it's so annoying. Why don't we do something about that? And I think having that support also from the community that we built up during that time, I think was for us also a big achievement of confirmation of what we're doing goes into the right direction, is needed, and also then builds energy within your organization. So I think that linked to each other, and I think personally as well, and that's also maybe one of the things I see too little in the social space, is that we had the opportunity now, because we're still working on the project and growing also in different directions, to build a team and to also build knowledge within the field that we're working in. And I think that is one of the greatest achievements, is that if you look at any of the startups, you most often in your first idea is not going to be the idea that you end up with. You're going to be wrong because you don't have any experience in the thing that you're doing. And I think the coolest thing is that we achieved is that we actually survived for a much longer time now than a lot of other social initiatives, and that we now also have a team and we have continuity, which helps us to also look differently at ideas and use the experience that we now have in the industry to come up maybe with even better ideas. I think that is a really, really big accomplishment in my personal view.
It is indeed not just in your view, but for sure we can see that that achievement as well. And it's true that this type of project with a social impact do need some structuring in terms of business modeling, in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of coaching, because of course the entrepreneurial spirit and the great willingness to change and to make positive impact are often not enough to create a sustainable project. So I think this gives us a great example of what this type of unlock acceleration support could look like, and of course a successful case of a project that made it, and that we hope will continue to grow. So I think I would like to thank you very much, both of you, for your time today and for helping us understanding more in practice what we mean by this huge free knowledge innovation that we refer to. And also I would like to take just the time to remind that the applications for this year are also still open until the end of May for the Unlock Acceleration Program. And this is exactly the type of projects that we hope to see applying in this round as well. So thank you very much, both of you, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you for watching WeFounders podcast. My name is Alex Proničić and I will be co-host this season. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter.